What is unpacking? The unpacking is essentially a process of reversing any kind of obfuscation or compression or encryption which might have been applied to the object. If you think about compression, you're thinking really about taking any number of files you're used to dealing with and creating an archive which contains them. That single archive is the end result of packing. And if you're talking about the zip archive, that's a single file that you would kind of mail to somebody or send somebody to work with. Unpacking is the process of reversing that, taking that archive apart, extracting all of the files contained within it, and then, later on, analyzing it. So that's what unpacking is. There are many different file formats that need to be unpacked, and not all of them are created equal. This basic example talks about an archive, but compression is really different for executable formats, for mobile applications. All of them have specific ways of how the data is compressed. And that gets us into options of how do you actually do unpacking, right? There are two different approaches. There's the static approach and there's the dynamic approach. Static approach is analyzing the file as it is written on disk, trying to extract all of its components and reconstruct them so they can be used, while dynamic approach is running the file, observing what happens, collecting the necessary information, and then saving the unpacked file. So the differences are really whether or not the file runs or not, and what kind of data is available at different points. Both of those approaches are valid approaches, but they come with different trades-offs. With static analysis, really, you need to implement an unpacker for every single file format individually. So you need to know how to parse a zip file, you need to know how to parse an executable file, you need to know how to parse compressed executable files, you need to know how to parse mobile applications and so on. The list just grows. For dynamic analysis, it's a little bit less complicated because you only implement them for, let's say, executable files, and then any compression within the executable file might be supported through generic terms. But you lose a lot of the fidelity, right? You need to be able to understand and be able to reconstruct these things automatically, which is really, really difficult. What we specialize in is creating static unpackers. And we have hundreds of static unpackers that we've built so far. They are really tailored to a specific file format. So we have an unpacker for a zip file. We have an unpacker for an Office document. We have an unpacker for an executable file, which is packed with a specific packer. And the list just keeps on growing. And there's differences in how we implement unpackers for these different file formats. So we split them into two groups. We split them into Goodware formats and malware formats. So the Goodware formats we think about, they are really archives, documents, things which are well-defined, things which have format definition, things which can be unpacked by observing that format definition. And they're relatively easy to implement because the structure is known, the specification is known. Where things get a little bit more complicated is malware formats. There's a lot more malware formats than there are Goodware formats, and they're really good at hiding code. So to be able to create the definition for the malware format, we need to reverse engineer the file format. And we need to understand its structure and document it to be able to fully implement an unpacker which unpacks the file. So how does that process look like? We reverse engineer, we document, and then we create an unpacking module which basically simulates the execution of the file. And once the file is simulated to a point where it reaches the original code, we then reconstruct that code and then we can observe its behavior. That's what unpacking does for us. It lets us get to the original intent of the application so the users who are analyzing the application know the true meaning of the code which was packed.